What is going on, everybody? It's Mikkel here, and I am here with another episode of the Funnel Vision Show. I'm very, very excited because we get a lot of requests about delivery and how do we get out of the operations as agency owners and as marketers. How do we really systemize a lot of those processes? And today's guest is here to help us get clear on how we can really systemize our agency delivery. I've got Gray MacKenzie with me. Gray, how's it going?
Great. How are you doing, Mikkel?
I am very well, very well. Now, as always, we always start with the usual, what are your not so humble bragging rights? What have you been able to do for clients? What have you been able to do for your business? In other words, why should people listen to this episode when it comes to project management and it comes to delivery?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the main stats, I don't really love volume stats, but I do think they tell you something. And so our team at ZenPilot, we were project management experts, and we're deep in the agency space, and then on top of ClickUp. So we've led over 3,000 teams into and through kind of revamping their operations centered around ClickUp specifically. Before that, I built a project management software called Do Inbound. We were focused on the inbound marketing space. It was super, super niche. And so we were serving other agencies, bootstrapped that and grew it to over 500 customers around the world in the software space before pivoting into training consulting today.
Wow. So 3,000, just around 3,000. That's a lot of agencies. It's a lot of people that you've helped. So let's take it back to like number one, right? How did it start? How did you get to diving into this world of kind of project management? Walk me through a little bit of the journey.
Yeah. Real quick highlight, my best friend, Andrew and I started an agency called Guava Box in 2011. We started out of our dorm room as we were getting ready to graduate college. And we had no idea what we were doing for the first year. Finally plugged into the HubSpot partner ecosystem really early on. We were one of the first couple hundred partners of HubSpot. And that was a big turning point for us to start bringing on clients and just have a standardized, like, who are we for? What are we selling? And as that started to scale, any business is just a series of obstacles that you go through. Like, what's the idea? Can you get one customer? Can you deliver for that customer? Can you sell more customers? Can you deliver at scale? Can you be profitable? You're doing all that. And so as we started to have to deliver at scale, we really struggled with project management. We didn't find one of the core pains, and I think this is for a lot of teams still a pain that exists today, is we'd hire people, we'd have a standardized process for how we do stuff, but that would live separately in Google Drive or whatever. And then in the work where they're actually running through stuff in their project management software, the processes that we had built in Google Drive are like the 3-ring binders that sat on shelves in offices for years and years, and nobody, you got it out once a year when you had to do staff training, and otherwise no one ever referenced it back. So the big pain was like we couldn't get the process to live where the work was actually getting done, so people weren't following the process. And so anyways, that wound up leading us into building some project management software for ourselves that was really process reliant and kind of template driven. That worked really well for us. And then we took that to some other agencies. And that was really the first time going real deep with other teams into what their processes look like. And there was a ton of unlocks and realizations with those first handful of teams around what are people doing that's cool, and we should definitely adopt this stuff, and we should be doing this for ourselves. And what are they doing that's just fundamentally broken, and we've got better ideas. And so it's been this 3,000 agencies is really that's a huge learning process for us. There's something that we can, we're just constantly viewing this as, hey, we're building an asset as we go, and this library of knowledge and seeing problem and solution, this pattern set, gives us the ability to bring some really fast solutions to other teams.
How did you grow to 3,000 agencies? What was that like?
Yeah, it was helpful when we made the transition in end of 2017, early 2018 from our own software into ClickUp. We were bringing hundreds of customers who'd been software customers of ours, and as we slowly sunset our platform over 2 years, bringing them into ClickUp. And then the next thing that worked super well in terms of customer acquisition was building a ton of content around ClickUp. If you go search for ClickUp for agencies, you're going to find ZenPilot content out there. So that's been a big part of it. And then ultimately, in terms of scaling that out, a ton of this, like the agency space, I think most spaces, the world is still small. There's a ton of people out there, but the world is still small. And so your reputation has a ton to do with it. So doing good work, delivering real results has been a big part of driving. Like referrals have continued to be a really big piece of this too.
Nice. So walk me through a little bit about the decision process to stop your own software, switch over to ClickUp. What was that kind of aha moment? Like, you know what, this is software. I run a software, so I know what the software game is. So where was that kind of tipping point? What changed?
Well, we started with the not so humble brag, and this is the not so humble reality, or the very humble reality, I guess. We really struggled with churn on the software side. Like it was so hard to keep, because we were so process driven. If you had good process documentation coming into working with our software, you loved it and you stuck. And if you didn't, which unfortunately was the vast majority of our customers, it was really frustrating software to use until you had that built. And so most people did not put in the work and churned out. So we really struggled to get churn below 5% monthly. And obviously if you're churning out, 5 to 10% monthly, like you go through your customer base pretty quickly. And as we kept growing in size, that's more and more MRR dollars churning out every month. So to try and solve the churn problem, we started doing process consulting and said, hey, we'll come in, we'll help you identify what those processes should be, and we'll build it into the software. And that helped the churn problem, and it ate up a chunk of our time. And that was all the best clients, all the folks who were the most happy, got the best results, and told the most people, were the folks who we did process consulting for. And so this is a really humbling time in life where there was a big part of our identity that was tied to, but for both Andrew and I, tied to like, hey, we were in the services game before. Now we're in software. Like we want to be software founders. That's who we are. That's all, it's a way better multiple on your business. There's a lot better financial outcomes from that. And the reality of what the market was saying was like, hey, we're way better as trainers and consultants in helping people solve this problem. That there's a ton of different tools, and Do Inbound is not that different from all the rest of the tools. And the reason that the average agency switches project management tools every 19 months is because they never fix the underlying problem. So once we got over ourselves, which took 6 to 9 months to say, hey, we should just go in on being consultants here and solving this problem, like the root issue, that started the transition from software over to consulting.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I understand. We have a software that is very user heavy, and there's a specific type of person who loves it, and then everybody else loves the idea of it, but then they're like, oh man, okay, it's actually more complicated. So we've had to do something similar. We've also added kind of a service component to our software. So I know exactly what you're going through and how you've kind of gone through that. So you came to the realization. So now walk me through what is it that you do and that makes a successful, highly operationalized agency versus one that isn't?
Yeah, right. So we've talked with these thousands of agents. I mean, if we've worked with 3,000, like we've definitely as a team talked to more than 10,000 agencies. And everyone who's talking to us has some pain point that they're trying to solve. And it's all over the place. Like, hey, I don't have visibility into what's happening across my team. I need to know how to do resource management, capacity planning. I need to look at profitability, whatever. Or, hey, we don't have good processes. My team keeps messing up. Clients aren't happy, whatever. All of those, like the general state, or the word that has come up the most frequently, is chaos. Like we're living in a state of chaos. And so the antidote to that is really clarity, like giving everyone in the organization from top to bottom clarity of, at the high level, hey, your numbers, down to the individual contributor knows what's on my plate, what do I need to get done today, and how do I do it? And the pieces that need to get solved to give teams that clarity are the 3 key pieces: are tools, processes, and habits. So the tooling piece is obviously that's the software, that's the Funnelytics or the ClickUp or the whatever else. And then how those things interplay. The process piece is, hey, how do we actually deliver on work and make sure that we're doing it the right and best way every time? And then the habit piece is do people actually know how to use this, and are they actually doing it, which is the big piece, building a culture of accountability that's so hard to do for so many teams, regardless of type. Obviously, we see this in agencies, primarily in our ecosystem, but that spreads across business type. So that's what we're focused on, is those three things. So the tool piece is, hey, we've done more. We're ClickUp's largest and highest rated solutions partner. We've done more of this than anyone else. So if you're running or you want to run on ClickUp, we can help you on the tool side. On the process side, that's both one-on-one consulting. And then there's also, we've got a huge template library, kind of like pre-built. Hey, this is what we've seen work well. And that's part of accumulating our learnings of, hey, what's happening with teams. And then the habit side, I think, is the biggest part. This is the part I would never market first in our business, because this is not the sexiest part at all. But it really boils down to, do people know what's expected of them? And then do you actually follow through on expecting that? Like, do you measure it, and do you hold them accountable day in and day out? So, we're teaching teams like, hey, here's what a daily spot check and a weekly roundup and a monthly review and a quarterly analysis looks like. And that daily spot check is mind-blowing and feels overwhelming to pretty much every client. Like, I'm going to actually go babysit my team every single day. And I think this is the most important of all the pieces. I would for sure rather have a crappier tool setup with 100% adoption than the coolest setup in the world with the best processes that nobody actually follows.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the habits is the most important piece, because who cares if you got tools, and who cares if you got a process? Nobody does anything with them, right? At the end of the day. However, I also fully understand that there's different types of people out there. There's different types of founders. I will tell you right now, I despise logging into any sort of project management tool. I'm a more of a visionary type of founder. I like to be creative. So anything that has to do with logging into some sort of project management tool is like, man, please, no. So how do you approach that? Because obviously I understand the benefit and the value of it, and why it's important. But when you deal with founders who are a little bit more like me, what do you recommend? Do you have them kind of say, hey, we need to get you a project project manager? And, how do you kind of start to think about the team in relation to the skill sets?
Yeah, I'd say three things there. First one is, you say that you understand the value. Almost everyone will say that. They don't really understand the value because they've never experienced the true benefits from it. Like, do I actually make more money by paying attention to this or not? Most of the time there's no lines drawn to connect that. It's like, I could conceptually see that if we tracked every single minute of every single day and we looked at this and that, like, we could get benefit, but they've never experienced that. And so they don't really, like, heart of hearts, don't really believe that it'd be better. Their belief is, like your sign says on the wall behind you, like, hey, everyone just get shit done and we'll be good to go. And that's better than everyone like logging in and micromanaging stuff. And that's their fundamental belief. So there's got to be some kind of proof then that if we're all going to do all this work to try to centralize stuff or have standardized processes, that there is ROI from that. So I think that's number one, is figuring out how do you actually prove that and use numbers to prove that. So there's got to be hey, we can improve your capacity or your profitability, or, it's almost always going to show up first in capacity. As you get more efficient, now we've got more capacity to take on work, and then it's going to show up on profitability as you sell into that capacity. Second thing is, and this is this is an area that I've evolved in a lot. When we started, I would have said, like, hey, everything's got to be in the system. Everyone's got to be using it. It should be the same. How can the leader ask someone to follow something that they're not willing to do themselves? And I've changed and now said, hey, no, we just need to make realistic commitments to ourselves and to the team. So I'm totally okay and comfortable if you say, hey, I'm never going to log into this platform. I'm not going to log anything. And we know that we've got to build in some margin. These numbers will not be perfect because that's not being logged. Whatever it is, or this process might not get followed. Let's just be realistic about what we're asking people to do. So if we're talking to a founder and he's like, I hate time tracking, I know it'd be helpful if we did time tracking, or I hate documented processes, or I hate having everything in there. That's fine. They might not be a great fit to work with us, or they might, depending on how far that extends. But we just have to be realistic about what we're asking. Like if we're actually setting an expectation for the team, then it's got to be something that we hold to it. I think like the real test of any policy is, are you willing to lose money over it or lose people over it? And so don't set an expectation. Don't say we're all going to track all of our time, or we're all going to log all of our work in this system so we can actually know where that project lives. If you're willing to make an exception, if somebody says, it's a super high performer and they're like, hey, I'm just not going to do it, then don't make it if you're not willing to back it up and say, all right, okay, I warned you, I trained you, I gave you all the expectations, and now I'm going to fire you because you didn't do it, then just don't make that expectation from the beginning. So I think that's an area where we spend a lot of time with teams up front, is what's the realistic expectation that you're willing to, what's the standard that you're actually willing to keep.
And how do you deal with that when it comes to CEOs, and of course, I assume you work with agencies who are, just at that kind of $1 million range, about give or take, who are in that getting ready for processes, or you tell me, is that who you kind of deal with?
Average agency that we work with right now, like there's a huge range here from some folks just below the $1 million range to 8-figure agencies, but the average team right now, if you just looked at team size and revenue, is a little over $3 million in revenue.
Okay. So that means that at this stage, at $3 million, the CEO, the agency owner, is very much out of the delivery aspect, or he should be at this stage, right? So for all of the owners listening right now, what are you saying to them? How are they thinking about this? Is this a system for their team, or is this a system for the company, and therefore they also have to be part of that? Does that put them back in delivery because now they see every little thing? Because as much as I do that agency owners are the marketers who started the agency to begin with. And therefore, once they start to see little things get done in detail, now they start to nitpick. And that's the last thing you kind of want as like the operational team, to have your crazy CEO come in and break shit, right? So how do you kind of play that balance, for these $3 million agencies?
Yeah. So, I mean, and this too, like the most unfair advantage that an owner has is the ability to sell and drive, like gain attention in the market. So for sure, you want to have as little time as possible, ideally no time spent on delivering. And you want as much time as possible going towards kind of internal culture and alignment, and externally driving attention and deal flow from the marketplace. There's an advantage that a founder has when they're servicing a client directly versus someone else, but that advantage is a lot smaller versus when they're selling versus someone else is selling. So I would say for sure we want to get founders out of delivery like ASAP. Most of the teams that we're working with, they're either all the way out or they're most of the way out already. And that's a piece of it. Then I'd say, what are you willing to tolerate? If you expect your team to track time, and part of this is tied to what's your billing model, part of this is tied to how do you do capacity. I'm totally fine saying, in fact, I often would prefer to not do time-based capacity management. So if we're looking at like an account management position, can we go off of revenue managed, or we're looking at a media buyer? Hey, they should be able to manage this amount in ad spend versus hours, but there's got to be some system for how we say, hey, this person's doing a good job, and like we're profitable on this person's time. So whatever that system is, there's got to be something, and most folks default to time. And then I'd say, what's the tolerance? So if you are still doing delivery work and you're like, hey, I'm fine if the numbers are 10% off, I'm like, okay, then I'm fine if you don't track your time. That's like, everyone else will have to track their time, and there's just a different standard for you. And I've gotten way more comfortable. This is an area where I felt so uncomfortable, even personally. I can't possibly ask my team to do something I'm not doing. And now there's like 20 things at ZenPilot that I ask my team to do that I also don't do, and just realized that's fine. I have someone else who manages my email. Like, not everybody gets that, and that's okay. That's not like it's not a badge of honor that I manage all my own email or whatever. So if there's some tolerance, then totally fine. And if there's no tolerance, then your options are either you do it yourself or you hire somebody and you're paying somebody to plug in where your time went, and you got to figure out a system for that. So, yeah, it's probably long-winded, but that's how I would approach the Like, what do we do with founders? And to the point around like, I mentioned daily spot checks earlier. One of the hard and fast rules of ZenPilot is no owner or founder is ever allowed to be your internal ClickUp champion, to be the person who's doing that daily spot check.
There you go. That's what I was looking for, because I was like, that's perfect.
They'll start out super strong. They'll be excited about it. Something will come up that actually is a higher priority on that day, and they'll do it. And that was the right thing for the business, but the wrong thing for like your project management habits. You need somebody who's it's just a total different personality type for who should be there.
100%. And that's kind of what I was looking for and understanding, who and how do you put that in place? Because we're kind of running up on time here. I want to ask you, what is your best growth tactic? We're all marketers. We all love shiny objects, shiny tactics, and all these things that help us grow. So I want to hear from you. If you were to talk to all of the agencies, all the marketers that you've talked to, you're a marketer yourself. What is that one thing that you'd be like, man, just do this and it'll work?
Right. If I could cheat, I'll share two, and I'll say the one. These are kind of like two different stages. One piece is, where do all the dollars come into telling people how to solve this space? It all comes from software. Back to like, software is a better business to run. It's valued more highly. You can raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And so you got Monday.com and Asana and Smartsheet and Trello and ClickUp all spending millions and millions of dollars on telling customers of all different industries that, hey, you just need to plug into this tool and that'll finally solve your project management problems. So it's not true. You need all three you need the tools, the habits, and the processes. But that's where all that ad spend comes from, and the market education comes from, and that's why people switch tools all the time. So, like, if everyone would listen the same to whatever I was preaching about, I'd just preach habits all the time. I would be so boring, but everyone would pay attention. But nobody does. We all pay attention to the tools. So what we did is we have produced a ton of content around ClickUp and tried to kind of ride that wave of ClickUp's growth. And this is differed a little bit from the early days where ClickUp was coming out of beta and nobody knew about it. But as ClickUp started to gain traction, we went super hard from an SEO perspective. And so we're big on YouTube and on the blog in terms of, here's how to do ClickUp for these specific use cases or needs. That's worked well. That was not the way that we initially got a lot of traction. The way that we got a lot of traction initially was going into groups or communities and doing often live trainings. So someone's got a community of agency owners and go in and do a live training or a live case study and walkthrough of, hey, here's what worked well, or teach and give stuff away. Here's the client onboarding template you could use and start benefiting from now. And inevitably, you can teach it all, and 10% of people are just going to say, I've got more money than time and I'd rather just hire you. So that, I think, super early stage, that's a better approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, most people don't take for granted that other people have audiences out there of your dream customer and your dream client, and you should go to those audiences. And they're already there, so you may as well. So great. Thank you so much for your insights. This has been a very insightful conversation and it's very helpful. So where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably, obviously, ZenPilot.com is the website. And we give away a ton of free content on there, both agency, like process specific, and then ClickUp specific. And then LinkedIn, producing a lot of content on LinkedIn. And so that's another place to find me, just Gray MacKenzie. And that's a pretty unique name. So you and I probably both get to benefit from that.
There you go. Yeah, we both have unique names where there's only one of us. Appreciate your time, man. And we'll chat soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mikkel.